Hey everyone, so today we're going to be talking about vibrato. A lot of you are curious about practicing and learning it, incorporating into your music, your pieces that you're learning at school. And us coaches at ShareStan, we really want you to make sure you're not hurting yourself or doing vibrato wrong, because even if it's just early learning stages of vibrato, if you build up good habits, it'll become a lot easier for you to learn vibrato fully and the right way, correctly as you get older. So, what is vibrato? Well, vibrato, you're basically bending, altering the pitch of whatever note you're trying to play on your instrument, and you're going back and forth really fast from the main note that you're trying to play on your music and below the note. And it's basically the kind of the Italian word for vibrate, if you want to think about it. And it's basically how a singer would project without a microphone back in the day. When you hear opera singers and you hear arias, people who didn't have microphones and they need to project to the audience members all the way in the back of a big great concert hall. They use a lot of vibrato because it often produces a richer and stronger tone than you would when you're singing straight. So how do we use vibrato? When do we use it? That's kind of hard. Vibrato is basically a tool that we have in our tool belt, right? It's a skill that you will learn that can really enhance your expression. So we don't want to use vibrato on everything, right? Because straight and pure tones of our instrument is already really beautiful and can convey a lot of different things that we want to say in our music. But you'll get more familiar with how to and when to use vibrato specifically as you go along in your journey of learning vibrato. So before we talk about how to play vibrato exactly, how to start learning and incorporating that into your daily practice routine, it's really important to practice all your scales, I think, without vibrato. Scales, the main thing is for intonation, right? That means how in tune we are when we're playing each note on our instrument. And when we're playing scales and practicing them before we play our pieces, it's really important to not add any vibrato so you can work on your intonation and then add vibrato later on when you're looking at specific pieces for performance or recordings and whatnot. So basically for violins, there are two types of vibrato for upper strings in general violins and violas, and one is a wrist vibrato and the other one is the arm vibrato. For me, I learned both when I was a kid, but I really recommend the arm vibrato. There's a less chance of injury and it sounds really nice. It sounds, in my opinion, better than the wrist vibrato, and you can use vibrato longer since you're using your arm muscles, mostly your forearm and your bicep, tricep. It's a lot more. You can play vibrato a lot longer if you're playing in an orchestra or any sort of longer piece in general. And there's just basically a less chance that there's a smaller chance that you'll hurt yourself when you're practicing. So today we'll be talking mainly about the arm vibrato. So the best way to learn arm vibrato is basically starting in third position. But don't worry, if you're not ready for that, you can also play it in first position. I would practice vibrato. Each of these exercises that I'm going to show you, I would do them with each finger slowly and with a metronome. Just like you would really with any piece when you're just learning the raw techniques. And for arm vibrato, I like to start in third position with our first finger and on the A string. So choose a string that you're comfortable with, also choose a position that you're comfortable with. But when you're in third position, the advantage is that you get to have your palm on the upper bout of your instrument. That's kind of a resting spot. It's kind of a go-to starting spot when you're learning vibrato, to have your arm and your wrist relaxed and touching the instrument in third position. It would be kind of hard to do that in first position, obviously, because your wrist won't be able to touch the instrument. So I really recommend starting in third. But if not, that's okay. You can do the following exercises just the same in first position. So the main thing with vibrato is that you want to start, and this is going to be our first exercise, you never want to vibrate above the note. So when you're playing, you always want to start from the main note, go slightly below the note, and back to the main note. And I'll do this without metronome first to show you how it sounds. But here's D on the A string in third position, first finger, and we're just gonna go very slowly. You'll hear the difference. It'll kind of sound like an insect, like a fly, mosquito, or a bee. that's kind of buzzing around your ear, but here it goes. So basically, my arm and my hand is touching the instrument on the main note, so D, and then once I slightly go down and pitch bend down, my fingers are all very relaxed, they're no longer standing up, and my wrist is further away from me. So I'll do that one more time. And the main thing is you don't want to be leading with your wrist. There is movement in the wrist, but the reason why this is an arm vibrato and not a wrist vibrato is because your arm is actually leading this whole movement. So it's as if, you know, a private teacher is in your home, or if a parent or a sibling is kind of pushing and guiding your arm away from you and then bringing it back closer to you. So you never want to guide and lead this movement with your wrist. That's actually how we can hurt our wrist potentially. But everything is in the arm movement. So you'll see that fast, and I'll play basically a concert vibrato, if you will, right now for you, so you can see the actual movement in the arm. So all the movement that I just played basically was all in the arm, and the wrist is kind of there, but it's very loose, it's relaxed, and there's absolutely no tension in the wrist. So let's start with exercise number 1. So set your metronome to quarter equals 60. And basically on every click, it will alternate between the main note and also the note right below it. And it looks like this in third position, first finger. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that was basically the first exercise that you should do. Think of it as your warm-up. You really want to get the motion down, so don't rush this process. Be patient. Vibrato can be very frustrating, I get it. It took me a while to get it. It's very unnatural in the beginning, and you'll get more and more used to it as you go along. But that first exercise, do that with your first finger, and once you're comfortable doing all the exercises with your first finger, then move on to your second finger, third finger, and fourth finger. And then practice also in other positions as well. But I would really recommend starting in third position, just like I did, starting with your hand firmly on the upper bout or touching, and then basically moving your whole arm back, making sure your fingers and your wrist are really flexible, and basically just bending the pitch back and forth without going above D on A. So once you finish exercise number 1, and I would do that at quarter note equals 60, and going up 66, 69, 72, do that for a few clicks faster on the metronome, and move on to exercise number 2. So exercise number 2, I would go back to 60, but this time you're going to play 2 notes per click. So here's quarter note equals 60, and this is the second exercise for your vibrato. So if you notice, this is twice as fast as exercise number 1. You're basically you're playing both the main note and the note right below it, both in one click. So it's twice as fast. Do that for a couple clicks at 60, 63, 66, 69, and so forth. And be patient. Again, never go above the main note. And if there's any tension in your wrist, shake it out, take a few minutes, and then practice again. You never want your wrist or your arm to feel very tight. And now exercise number 3, same thing, start at quarter note equals 60, and now this time play 4 notes basically, main note, below, main note, and below, 4 notes per click. So here's exercise number 3. if you notice with exercise number 3, as we get closer and closer to what a vibrato actually sounds like, because vibratos are usually a little bit faster than that, generally, the movement starts to get smaller, and that's okay. We just don't want you to still lead with your wrist. Everything is in the arm. Your wrist is just following your arm. And the movement between the note will get smaller and less audible, and that is normal. Once we get to concert vibrato, I'll then show you how to play vibrato. That's all sorts of combinations of faster and slower, also tighter vibrato versus wider. But here's exercise number 4, which is basically 8 times, so you're doubling again. You could do 6 times or 8 times per click. So here's exercise number 4 at metronome equals 60 again. So exercise number 4, like I said, you can do 6 times total. So main note below, main note below, main note below, 3 and 3 basically, or 4 and 4, 8 times, which is just what I just showed you just now. And that is basically you're getting there to your concert vibrato. And because that is already really pleasant sounding compared to the 3 previous exercises, use that as a standard. If you can achieve that sound in exercise number 4 with the first finger, then practice all those exercises with your other fingers. And by then, you should be able to feel comfortable playing on different strings as well, because remember, each string feels differently. It's a different gauge of string, so obviously the G string is a lot thicker than the E string and can feel harder to vibrate. So I would really start on the A string when you're practicing from the beginning. Once you get the basic 4 exercises down with your first finger, I would then move on to different dynamics with different speeds. So start playing pianissimo at concert vibrato, and you don't have to use metronome for this. This is just an open exercise. And here's pianissimo or piano, so quiet vibrato. And once you're comfortable with that for a few times, then I would move on to about mezzo forte, so speaking voice, talking voice. So here's mezzo forte. And then the third step would be to play forte or fortissimo, so as loud as you can, and try to really fire up the speed of your vibrato. Push yourself to the limit. A lot of times we won't be using this type of sound in the pieces that we're playing. It's a little bit harsher, it's a little bit uglier, but it's a really good exercise to see how fast we can play this vibrato and how basically expand our range of different types of vibratos. So here's fortissimo and fast. And then I would basically do the same exercise once you've got that down with different level dynamics. 3 levels is usually good for me, but this time with a slower, more relaxed vibrato. So when you're playing at the end of a phrase, maybe at the end of a piece, or maybe even the beginning of a piece, kind of an intro section that's calmer, you don't necessarily want such an agitated sound. So here is pianissimo with a slower vibrato. And now here's mezzo forte, same thing with the slow vibrato. And feel free to delay it so you don't have to start vibrating right away. Now we can start maybe halfway through our bow. But for the purpose of this exercise, I will start the vibrato right away. And the last exercise would be forte or fortissimo, same thing, a slower, more relaxed vibrato. So those are basically some of the ways to really start learning vibrato at your early stages of basically learning this instrument. And vibrato is really hard to get right, but the good thing is it's really easy to tell if you're doing it wrong. If you're feeling any tension in your wrist, if you're feeling like your note doesn't sound like someone singing, and basically it sounds really out of tune, or it sounds like you're not able to find your pitch, those are all things to tell you that it's probably not right, and you should stop, slow down, and then reevaluate your playing and your technique. But the main thing is, if you're feeling that your wrist is tightening up, even without pain, it's good to just take a break in general and stretch, and make sure to reevaluate, okay, am I leading with my arm or with my wrist? So that's the most important part of learning and differentiating between arm and wrist vibrato. But that's it. Please be patient with this whole process, take it easy, and happy practicing.